Welcome everyone to another wonderful episode of Help for the Guildless. My name, of course, is Antwon, and Happy New Year. We are, at the time of this posting, 3 days into the newest current year, and, well, I'm going to be talking about something from the beginning of last year. I just came across it today because of scanning for things to talk about. I had nothing to talk about. I didn't know what I was going to do, and my friends, Mr. Riley Dennis did not fail in the attempt to garner my ire. So, we have, Hey White People, You Can Call People White. That's the title of his video. I found it on Everyday Feminism, and it filled my heart with joy because that meant I had content to talk to you people about. So, without further gilding the lily, I present to you, Hey White People, You Can Call People White.
Hey humans, I'm Riley, and have you ever noticed how white people only point out another person's race if that person is not white? I run into this a lot, and I feel like most of the time, but not all of the time, it's to enforce some sort of stereotype.
And therein lies the first problem, Riley. You feel it's because of some form of stereotype. I don't want to spoil too much of my argument against this, so I'm going to just continue to let him flap his gums as much as he possibly can, and then completely destroy him. Please, be prepared.
Like, you would never hear a white person say, oh, this white guy cut me off on the road the other day. But you would definitely hear a white person say, oh, this Asian lady cut me off on the road the other day.
Are you kidding me? When someone cuts me off on the road, it doesn't matter if they're white, black, purple, or yellow. They're all motherfuckers. And when I'm telling the story, I never actually say white. Now this, of course, is anecdotal evidence only to me. I never say that white bastard, or that black bastard, or that Asian bastard. I say, that motherfucker almost caused me to get into an accident. I can't believe I have to deal with these ingrate assholes on the road. That's how stories usually go. And then someone goes, well, were they white? And then you go, you know what, I didn't know because I was too angry and I passed them. You're putting the stereotype in.
Because they have this stereotype that Asian women are bad drivers, and so when that happens, they want to reinforce that, and they want to make sure you know that this person was Asian and was a woman so that you know that's why they were driving poorly.
Actually, everyone is a bad driver. Every race has bad drivers. What they're actually doing when they say that Asian woman cut me off is they are letting the person they're telling the story to paint the picture in their head of what actually happened. It's called telling a story. Now, the stereotype of women being bad drivers, or Asians being bad drivers, is just that, a stereotype. And believe it or not, the world does not revolve around stereotypes. Again, you're putting this as a bad connotation on something. You. Not anyone else. You.
But if it was a white person, it was just a white person, and there's no need to say what their race was. You can just say, a guy cut me off on the road yesterday, or a person cut me off on the road yesterday.
Yeah, let me explain it to you in the easiest terms possible. When you are with a group of people that tend to look exactly like you, when you are talking about someone else, that race, no matter what it is the default race. If you're in a group of white people, the default race is that race. If you're a group of Indians, that race is the default race. If you're in a group of African Americans, that's the default race. The only time that you have to denote the race of a different person that you are telling a story about is if it's to separate their identity and their race from the race that you are. It's not doing it on purpose. It's, again, as I said before, painting the picture of the story you're telling.
That annoying idea that if a person of color does something, it represents their entire race, but if a white person does something, it was just a one-off isolated incident and doesn't represent all white people.
You disingenuous prick. It works for white people as well. Have you ever not seen an episode of Cops? Everyone is determined to be white trash. And that is supposed to represent our entire race. Yes, when you act out as a particular race, you then become the representative of that race for that person. It's not just people of color. It's for white people as well. Do you want an example? Hitler. Hitler is a perfect example of it because Hitler is the determined factor of what German people are supposed to be like. He is the one that they make the stereotype off of. He is the one that jokes are made from. He is the representation of Germany. He's not, because I've met a multitude of German people who are quite pleasant. But he's a representation of an entire race. So yes, it happens to white people too.
And I never know how to respond when something like that happens, because it's not like blatantly racist, but it's a little subtly racist.
No, it's not. Once again, you're putting the negative connotation on it.
I think most people who speak like this don't actually realize what they're doing and generally aren't racist people and don't support racist policies, but that kind of subtly racist language has just made it into their vocabulary and their way of speaking, and it seems normal to them.
No, they're not racist. No, it's not racist language. Again, you are putting the connotation of racism in normal, conversational lexicon. It's only racist because you believe it's racist. Other than that, it's normal, everyday conversationalism. You should really think about this.
And I also think it's possible that this isn't just a white person thing, that people of all races kind of have this indoctrinated into them in the way that they speak.
Yes, it is normal for every race to speak this way. I've said that before. You almost got it, and then you decided to throw in the term indoctrinated. You, sir, have no idea what conversation is. You're so busy worrying about hurting someone's precious feelings that you have no idea that you are destroying the art of conversation. You have torn it apart, burned it, and then shat on the ashes. This is normal conversation. Only you think it's racist. No one else does. Oh, I take that back. No one else but the people who think exactly like you do.
I just feel like it's the most prominent with white people because white people will almost never specify if it's a white person they're talking about. Like if I'm talking to white people and in my story I talk about this white person who helped me or this white guy I saw or this white girl, they get kind of jarred, like I said something weird or a little bit off. Like people usually kind of look at me with a little questioning head tilt, you know? And
that's not because you called out someone who is also white, a white person. They're trying to figure out if the person they're talking to with the long hair and the Adam's apple that sticks out further than their chin is actually female or male. That's what they're trying to figure out.
Feels to me like it's because there's this unspoken rule that we don't specify someone's race unless it's not white. So when I say that a person was white, it's to them, to another white person, it's like, why are you telling me that? If you had just left it out, I would have already known.
Again, that has nothing to do with it. If the people you are talking to are white, and you are describing someone else who is white, you don't have to say it because it's automatically assumed that the person that you are describing is the same race as you and the rest of the people you're talking to. That is actually something that happens socially. That's sociological. It's not racist, it just happens. It happens with the other races as well. I've pointed this out for the third time now. You keep running back to this that you don't know if this is racist or not. It's not. It's sociological. Alright? So, if you were black, which I know you wish you were because the victim points would be so much more. If you were black, and you were talking to other black people, and you described a black person as black, to them, they'd look at you the same exact way. They'd look at you oddly. Why you gotta say he's black? We know he's black you're talking about, because you didn't say he was white. You didn't say he was Asian. You didn't say anything else. You are assuming that we are stupid.
I really don't like that, because it makes it seem like white is the default, like people are just white, period, and then if you're talking about something that's not the norm, you're talking about a person of color.
I direct you to my previous statement.
And given that most of the people in the world are not white, and that a large percentage of people in the United States are not white, I don't feel like white should be the default.
You're not in the world, Riley. You're in the US. Now, I don't know the numbers specifically for the world white population, but it sits, I believe, at around 25%. It's probably lower. If anybody knows, let me know. Now, as for the US, as of 2010, and this is the only thing that I could find that was pretty definitive, so, as of 2010, in the US, whites alone make up about 72.4%. That's why it's the default. It is the majority. Now, that leaves just over 26% for the other races. That is a large chunk, but not the majority. So, that's why the default in America is white. And again, it's not necessarily the default. What it is who you're talking to. Now, if you were in a group of mixed race, and you were describing the same thing that happened to a bunch of Asian and black people, you would say, this white bastard cut me off. That's the only time you really have to denote race, is when you're trying to paint that picture. Again, 72.4%. As of 2010, it's probably gone down since then. More than likely, we're dealing with about 66%. 7 years is 7 years. So, even going with the estimate of 66% white people, they are still the majority, which is why, when you are in a group of white people, it is the default. Only when you're in mixed race do you describe the race of the person you're talking about. Unless they know him. You don't go, that's White Steve over there, or that's Black Reggie. Idiot.
I've made a video before about how this has worked its way into our media, how we assume that white is the default, and it also works its way into our language and into our literature. Like, for instance, when you're reading a book, if the character is described and they don't really talk about their skin tone, you kind of assume that they're a white person, and if they're not, it'll be specified. They'll say that they have dark skin, or that they're black, or of Asian descent, or something like that. Like, the author works on an idea that the characters are all white unless you say otherwise.
And that is because of who wrote the book, and where the book was being released. Why is Harry Potter automatically assumed to be white? Well, because he's British. He's written by a white writer. Why are all the kids in Stephen King's It not described as white people? Because it's Stephen King dealing with northeastern America, where more white people are there than anywhere else besides California. Your false narrative that you're pushing, that the default of being white is bad, has nothing to do with anything that actually has to do with proper terminology or descriptions. It has to do with you putting race into it. The writer determines the default. If you don't like it, move to Africa, or India, or Japan, or China, or South Korea, because Lord knows you'd be killed in North Korea, where they do not determine race for their characters, but determine white for other characters. It is cultural, not racist.
I don't see the point in assuming that everyone is white unless stated otherwise. Like, if you're telling a story, just say the race of everyone in the story, or don't say the race of anyone in the story. And I'm not arguing for, like, color blindness. I'm not saying that we should just ignore everybody's race. Like, clearly...
Wait for it. This is going to be amazing amounts of mental gymnastics.
Race has a role in our world and how people are affected. Like, if your story is about a black person getting pulled over by the cops, their race is a component in that, and leaving it out of your story would kind of be misleading.
But let's leave out race of everything else unless it's going to push a certain agenda. If you're not going to call white people white, you can't call black people black. You can't say they have dark, beautiful ebony skin. If you don't say, the pasty-faced white boy. Do you see how stupid that sounds? You're an idiot. You're an ideologue. And, even worse, you are a racist, Riley. You put the race in everything, and no amount of mental gymnastics is going to fix that.
It's not always necessary to point out race, and so a lot of the times I've told stories and I don't specify the race of the person who's in my story, and then later, afterwards, the person I told my story to will see the person I was talking about and be like, oh, they're Asian. Like they assumed that I was talking about a white person because I didn't specify.
Let me guess. You don't say him or her either, because you wouldn't want to offend anybody. You don't want to assume their gender, so you don't say him, her, or you don't want to assume their race, because we know transracialism is a thing. Just ask Sean King. So when you introduce them as, this is the person I was telling the story about, and the other person looks absolutely dumbfounded, guess what? You're the asshole for not informing them. But of course, we wouldn't want to offend anybody.
Basically, all I'm saying is, to my fellow white people, if you're telling a story and there are white people in it, you can call them white. And in general, I think it's okay to describe the race of anyone in your story. But think about why you're bringing up their race when you're telling it. Is it just to reinforce a stereotype? Or is it genuinely just to describe what the person looks like? I just think 9
times out of 10, it is just a descriptor of what they are. Yes, I'm sure that other 1%, that other 1 time out of the 10 is a stereotype. Most of the time, stereotypes are used for humor. And since you don't understand humor, let me hit you in the face with it like a brick. When I describe one of my friends as a black-haired, chain-smoking, comic-reading, neck-bearded, tattooed asshole, he knows exactly who I'm talking about. If I then describe him as one of my best friends, he knows who I'm talking about. See, he gets the joke. You don't. He's one of my best white friends I have. So I stereotyped him to bring levity to the situation. It's that simple.
We gotta be a little bit more thoughtful and considerate about the words and the language that we use, because it does have a significant impact on how we see people and how we navigate the world.
We don't have to be careful, because if we end up being careful about the language that we use, we end up worrying about everyone else's feelings. And since I personally do not give a shit about anybody's feelings that I don't know, I don't care if they like me or they don't. By emphasizing race in everything, you are making it racist. By emphasizing sex in everything, you are making it sexist. Instead of it just being language. I don't need to pretend that I'm some special snowflake that gets my feelings hurt. And I know the people that I associate with feel the same way. And this will do it for me, ladies and gentlemen. If I sounded overzealous when I first introduced this video, I was, because I had no idea what I was going to talk about. But as you can see, Riley once again, well, proves the point that SJW and social justice, not even once. That's going to do it for me, ladies and gentlemen. My name, of course, is Antwon. This has been Help for the Guildless. If you liked what I had to say, please hit like, share this video around, and subscribe. If you didn't like what I had to say, or you have a correction for me in any way, let me know in the comments. You can follow me on Facebook, the link is down below. The link to this full video is down below as well. And you can follow Cole on Twitch, Twitter, and Tumblr. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, and have a wonderful evening.